Welcome to my podcast. My guest today, Peter Roxburgh, has lived a most incredible life across continents and cultures through adventure, danger, and moments of discovery. So, Peter, the first time you moved from England or live outside of England was when you, in 1979, moved to Africa. And you visited a number of countries there, and you worked in a number of countries, like Nigeria, Cameroon, and you visited countries like South Africa. So tell us a little bit about your story there. How was it when you first moved to Africa? What did you do, and what was the experience?
The first time I left England, I flew to Rotterdam, actually, and joined a ship. And the ship sailed 2 weeks to West Africa. And that's where I began my seismic life, offshore, mapping what was under the sea. First experiences of Africa were port visits into Douala and Pointe-Noire in the Congo. Big culture shock then. Africa at that time in the Congo was heavily influenced by Russia and armed by them. Quite scary times for me. Young soldiers, not particularly educated. But Nigeria was the main thrust, main learning curve for me. And that was working on land in the mangrove swamps and the rivers. So it was quite interesting there.
So you were really then working for a UK company.
Yes.
And or English company, and you were basically looking for oil.
Yes.
So you were sort of mapping the ground, mapping the earth, and trying to find if there could be any oil reserves in Nigeria.
Working for different companies, depending on the contract.
Yeah.
I'd be working 3 months and then with a 1 month vacation. One of the vacations I stayed in Africa, and that was probably the biggest culture shock of all, was experiencing apartheid in Johannesburg, South Africa. That was 1980, several years before the end of apartheid. So one particular experience stayed with me forever after that. And that's 45 years ago now. So would you like to hear about that?
Love to hear that story.
Well, apartheid up close, beyond the segregated toilets and segregated bus seats and what have you. The first night I visited the country, sitting in the hotel bar, a very elegant, well-dressed black man came into the bar, sat down, ordered a drink, but never received the drink. There were 2 other local men, but white Afrikaners. I'm sort of sitting silently watching what was going on, and they didn't want him there. They were scruffily dressed, so the contrast was very stark between, a proud businessman, black, and a couple of lowlifes that were white, and shouted him down, insulted him, and he left. He left with his head high and his briefcase, and politely told the bartender that he was moving on. And my jaw hit the floor. I'd never seen anything like that before. Pretty horrible experience.
So how did that affect you and your view on South Africa and the country?
At that time, I was living alone in the bush in Nigeria, and I was working with hundreds of staff, blacks, no other whites. So I'd already learnt how to address people, how to work, how to get the best levels of production out of the people. But I was still young, still learning at that time. But certainly I wasn't going to take any lessons from these South African white men. It was the opposite to what I'd learnt by that time.
So let's take you back to Nigeria, where you then went to work. And was this experience before or during that time in Nigeria?
The experience in South Africa?
Yes, the experience in South Africa.
That was before Nigeria.
So then you went to Nigeria actually to work and
Yeah.
to do this oil, looking for oil, exploration of oil. And given that Nigeria was previously a British colony, which gained independence in 1960, and now you are getting there as a white man from Britain, you and I worked there. You just had this horrible experience in South Africa. How did this now all affect you, and how did you approach your work in Nigeria? And do you feel any resentment from the Nigerians from the British period?
No resentment. I didn't feel any. And I worked in many areas of the country, even in the north, in the desert. No resentment towards whites. There was resentment towards the oil companies, but that I saw in many parts of the world, where the money wasn't forthcoming from the oil companies to the local people. There was always resentment up to that degree. But towards me as a white man, no. They were glad to have employment. I learned how to be firm but fair. There were others there in doing similar work that were more left-wing, let's say. And they didn't keep a distance between them as a boss and the staff and the laborers. They were too close, mixing too much, and they couldn't get the most out of the staff. There were lower levels of production, laziness, and it deteriorated. So I learned that very early to maintain some distance.
So there was an expectation of a certain hierarchy, and
Yes.
that you as a boss were in command or had
yeah.
knowledge.
But in some instances, the decisions I made would affect the safety of the laborers, because I was lucky enough to be responsible for several hundred men, a dozen vessels every day, each one with its own instructions, dynamite. So there are a lot of safety issues, and if you are a good boss, the staff understand that it's in their interests as well for you to be competent and efficient.
Yeah, so you have a high level of responsibility.
Yes.
Towards not only treating them well and getting the job done, but for pure safety.
Right. And I was only 22, 23 at that time. Yeah.
So how do you go about sort of structure your day when you work with all of these locals in Nigeria?
In Nigeria, the average day working on the shallow marine crew, where you have a dozen, say 5 speedboats, 3 or 4 large vessels going out into the surf or up the river, in the rivers. Yeah, wake up, have breakfast, call the foreman, give the instructions, and everything else would be over the radio, shortwave radio.
So what's some of them very sort of positive surprises you had as you walked into this job in Nigeria and working with all these hundreds of local people?
Was I surprised?
Yeah, on the what was a very positive upside surprise?
Yeah, I guess I was surprised, but it happened so fast that and that was the nature of the industry, was that you are given the responsibility, and if you fail, then you drop out. If you can do it, then you continue, and so it's a natural filter, so that the quality of the start of people like me, the engineers and the drillers and the people who are making the decision, the quality is high, and the camaraderie is very good too. You remain friends forever with these people because you're suffering the same hardships. It's not an easy life, getting bitten by insects all the time, and also stress. Sort of, you're in charge of other people's safety. So tides that are 3 meters, dangerous surf, trees falling, there are a lot of deaths from trees falling. Dynamite itself is dangerous. So it's quite a lot of stress as a young man, that was.
So you've had a strong bonding between you and the local Nigerians you were working with.
Yeah, I still remember some of their names, and it's so
Yeah.
so long, so long ago.
So did you end up finding any oil or oil reserves in Nigeria?
Well, normally the drilling for oil is several years after the teams like ours would go into the jungle. I mean, a lot of times we had to cut our way in. And I kept some paper cuttings. 2 years later, they would be drilling in the area where I was. And you'd know it was from your own work because the name of the oil company, the contract that you were working on. But it was generally 2 years later.
Were the local Nigerians then the ones working for you on your team? Would they end up then moving on and working for the oil company, or were they moving on to other?
Some did, but it was generally the ones that finished up working for the oil company with suits and briefcases would be from wealthy families. There was no route for the average local person. They would remain at a certain level, maybe rise to a foreman. That would be about it.
So, what was your biggest learnings in terms of culture? And you said you were well received in Nigeria, even given the colonial history of Britain. And what was your biggest surprise there in terms of the culture and how you were able to get along with it?
Well, I was invited to a funeral ceremony where they disemboweled the corpse, which was quite shocking. I've since found out that these are only high-ranking families that do this. They don't want the organs, or didn't at that time, didn't want the body organs stolen. which is a little similar to Europe in the 1700s, where they my ancestor's grave has got a cage around it to stop the grave robbers coming in and stealing the corpse. So I thought that was interesting. That and quite shocking to watch. They had a lot of kind of voodoo there in Nigeria. They called it juju. So a lot of sacrificing of animals to their kind of pagan type god. A lot of that, which was quite different.
Is that still going on today?
I don't know. One thing I do remember about Africa, maybe the final comment is that the wheels leaving the plane as it took off for the last time. I was quite happy to leave. Not because the people were very nice to me, but the conditions were harsh, and it was time for me to move on.
I understand that. So in wrapping up this your Africa experience, it must have taught you a lot about being resilient and also able to improvise, since there was not a lot of structure here you went into.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
what did it teach you in terms of improvisation and resilience?
I would be improvising almost every day because of weather conditions. For example, one particular contract we were on, we had these buoys with antennas that were laid out at sea, and to communicate with them at that time we had to put an air balloon into the sky with an antenna, and then this is how we could get the signals back from our microphones or hydrophone back to the computer system. I'm an engineer, so was my main concern, was the computer system to record all the data. And one day, quick storm, very, very fast, and the hot air balloon lost pressure with a sort of a huge storm coming, and just started going out of control with the loss of pressure, and we had to improvise very quickly to save the balloon. We didn't. It burst, and we lost all the electronics that were hanging beneath. Everyone was depressed, and fortunately, many hours into the evening, a man in a canoe came with our electronics box, which had dropped out of the sky into the bush, and we managed to repair it, and we carried on the next day. Otherwise, we would have had 2 weeks downtime, which would have been several $1 million of money wasted by the oil company. So I was quite interested.
What a beautiful story.
Not really improvising, but a bit of luck involved there.
So how would you describe the resilience needed to work in such an environment?
Mainly for health reasons. I improvised in one particular area of the mangrove swamps. I was getting bitten by big, large horse flies all the time. Being an engineer, I'm on sitting like this, actually, with the computer system, checking the checking the signals coming in from my equipment, and these horrible horseflies would be biting me on the back. So it's so hot, we're in shorts, no shirt. So I improvise by employing a man to sit behind me and catch the flies that were on my back. And by the end of every day, he'd have a bowl of wingless flies that I'd pay him $2 a day or whatever it was to catch the flies. But no one had ever done that before. So that's improvisation.
Also demonstrate a high level of resilience to live through and work through.
Yeah, mosquitoes are a walk in the park compared to these horrible flies.
So how can you say what the locals, how do they handle this type of flies? And
they grow up there. They don't have shoes. They can walk in the, yeah. I mean, they have a different skin. They have no problems with it.
very interesting.
For me, I'm very soft. I had to have mosquito nets to sleep at night. Sandflies also big problem. Cuts on your skin have to be treated well. Diet, very important. Learned that very early.
Yeah. What kind of food did you eat in
Fresh fruit, fresh vegetables. That's the main secret to staying healthy and keeping your body resistance high.
fresh fruits?
Yeah, and fresh everything.
So after your experiences and work in Africa, you moved on to Southeast Asia and set up camp in Singapore. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I kept pestering my bosses while I was in Africa for a transfer. I'd already moved took a vacation in the Far East and wanted to return. They wouldn't give me the transfer, so I found another job and made my way to Singapore, which would be my base for the next 6 years. From there, I worked in Indonesia for the next 5 years. 2 years in Irian Jaya, known as West Papua to some. 2 years in Sumatra, a year in Borneo, Kalimantan, and the Sulawesi Islands, all of which have massive culture differences, which were fascinating.
So tell us a little bit about those differences.
Well, the first 2 years were spent in Irian Jaya, where Irian Jaya, of course, is the ex-Dutch half of New Guinea island, very primitive. And Irian Jaya, where I was working, at least 100 miles from the nearest large town, dropped in by helicopter. The local people, naked, most of them, with penis gourds. Small ones for the young boys and the big long ones for the old men, with feathers on the end, which is quite interesting.
And what were they made out of?
Gourd. They're made out of a gourd, like a hard vegetable. In Europe, you have them shaped like this kind of thing, but these were long. kind of carrot, like a carrot kind of thing.
To cover the male genitals.
Yes, not the balls, the main part.
How about the ladies? Were they covered?
Grass skirts, bare chested. And sometimes you'd see a woman with a pig on one breast, because pigs were considered that they were used as money. They didn't have notes or coins or anything like that.
What do you mean by pigs on the breast?
Yeah, exactly that. A piglet, a baby pig, suckling on a breast.
For what reason?
The same reason as in Europe you would, if you had a baby animal, you'd feed it with a milk bottle.
So it was actually to feed the pig.
Yes. This shows their how important pigs were for them. Every ceremony that they had, the local people, they would use pigs. For example, if you wanted to marry somebody, there would be pigs involved as a dowry.
And there were a lot of different villages in here on Jaya.
Yeah, we would work, cover between 5 and 10 kilometers a day, moving in one direction. And quite often we'd pass close to other villages. Normally they were around 10 kilometers apart, often with different languages. So, they didn't integrate. Each village was very much its own almost feudal, where that anyone else is an enemy. And some of my laborers through interpreters would tell me that they don't like other people near, or that they would perhaps steal women from other villages for wives. So they're very, very protective of.
Would there actually be sort of stealing, or would it be more of an agreement that you need to find a lady to avoid inbreeding and so on?
Well, I'm guessing now there is agreement, and lots of diplomacy and lots of money. And when I left there, certain areas of the country where the T-shirts were starting to come in, westernization. But when I first went there was no T-shirts, which was quite interesting. Because across the border, which had more white influence in Papua New Guinea itself, where they had Australian colonization, it was completely different. There were lots of Western clothes and lots of Western behavior, which I didn't like, actually. It became quite ugly. In Irian Jaya, no resentment at all, just curiosity. At least one place I went to, they'd never seen Europeans. So they thought I was a ghost, actually. So
Dead man walking.
Right. Yeah. I remember one village deserted. Someone had spotted me and then passed on the message, and everyone had cleared out. So yeah, that took a lot of diplomacy and a lot of bags of rice to to get them back.
So in Iran Jaya, you were also out there looking for oil and potential oil reserves. Now working for an American company, I believe.
Yes, yeah.
And you needed, again, a lot of local people to help you.
Yeah, even more than were used in Nigeria. There were up to 400 men in Irian Jaya. The terrain was much more mountainous in some places. And technology had moved on. So the computer systems could handle so many more signals. So we could lay them out over a longer period, a longer distance. We'd have microphones in the ground, 3 kilometers either side of where the instruments were. So we need a lot of men to carry all the cabling.
How do you find all those people? How do you recruit them?
We have a recruiter, and you try to feedback all the time, because they are troublemakers that have to be weeded out. There are people die as well. You've got 400 or more people. They have to be fed. And all of this has to come in by helicopter. So it's another logistic that has to be controlled by me.
400 men, that's a lot of people. And how do you live there in what must have been like a jungle environment?
Just shelters that are made from the forest or from the mangroves. I had camp builders. They could make my camp in 3 hours with a couple of machetes. It's amazing. With mosquito nets, hammock, tarpaulin, completely weatherproof, 70% insect proof.
And it's, of course, a very tropical climate.
Yeah, very humid. The staff, labourer, used to live, and of course no toilets. So they would live certain distance away from my camp.
Did you have toilets?
No. In fact, that's a big culture shock coming back to Europe, or going on vacation and using toilets. I didn't like it, actually. I found it much cleaner to do it naturally.
Very interesting.
You just have to make sure what leaf you're using. Because there are some leaves to avoid.
Poisonous.
Right.
So you said that food and drinks were flown in by helicopters every day.
Yeah, every day if the weather was okay. But
And that was food for all 400 men and you?
no, it's just food for me.
Or just food for you?
Yeah. I'd have one igloo, a kind of ice box for me. The food for the labourers would come in a sling under a helicopter once a week. Basically rice, dry fish, some vegetables. They had their own cooks. In some places they had their own ladies, or particular kinds of ladies for them. One interesting thing I noticed I didn't see in Nigeria, but when I first went to Indonesia, there would be gay and trans people within the 400 or so. There would be several of these people. Interestingly, they weren't subject to ridicule or abuse. They were accepted, which is quite interesting to me, with makeup, but accepted by the local culture, local people. And at that time in England, no, not accepted. So it's only later that I realized how advanced, maybe the wrong word, but kind of advanced these primitive cultures were over our developed countries. Thailand, of course, is very tolerant of everything, always has been.
So during this time here in Jaya, were you alone as sort of a white man in the middle of this jungle?
Yeah. Shortwave radio to place my order for food and report on my daily production, and dynamite usage, things like that.
And of course, you also said you got some cold bears flown in.
Yeah. My main claim to fame in Irian Jaya was in my second year there. We broke all the records and we finished a Conoco contract a month early. And the Conoco sent me 100 cases of beer as a thank you. So, yeah.
That lasted a while.
Well, yeah, it didn't last very long because you give some to the laborers. And but yeah, that was the challenge at that time, was to be efficient with the instructions, because these men, they're carrying sometimes 40, 50 kilograms through, and up and down some steep mountains. So the challenge was to do everything efficiently and keep them motivated, the laborers, and in order to cover the ground and get good quality data. So you've got to take care of the equipment in order to not to be repairing it all the time. There's lots of interesting things, to cover every day.
So how was the morale working for all of this 400?
Generally really good. And it kind of feeds on itself. If you're doing well, basically I could order anything and get it the next day. And so I would incentivize the laborers with surprise them with something occasionally after a good day's work. That went down very well. The only time I saw morale dip was when the Javanese, or the laborers from the more educated part of Indonesia, would be winning at cards. They would be gambling and taking the money from the uneducated Aboriginals, the real local laborers, And then it became dangerous, because they would they want their money back. They felt cheated, and of course they were really, because the Javanese were introducing them to some game and then just taking their money. And so, and I had one scary encounter as a result of this, where the day after the guy had lost his money at cards, he decided, right, he's going to get his revenge, and everyone had bows and arrows there. Now, they didn't have any steel. It was all wooden bows and arrows, and this guy wanted to kill the guy that had taken his money the night before, and he was one of my instrument carriers, who sits with me while I'm doing the daily data gathering. We got a message on the radio line that this guy's coming, from each of the foremen that I've got laid out. They're calling, they're saying, oh, he's on his way to you. He looks very angry, and kept getting closer and closer. And then finally, the guy who had taken his money at cards grabbed hold of me, worried for his life. The guy came to me with a bow and arrow, aimed at this guy who is holding on to me, and we managed to resolve it. For 2 or 3 seconds there, I felt that was, this is going to be the end here. Not often you get a guy with a bow and arrow naked, with a bow and arrow pointed at you. So we resolved it, and the guy paid him some of the money back. So. But that's quite an interesting culture difference, because within the same country there's massive culture difference between in Indonesia, the different islands. I worked in Sumatra for 2 years after Irian Jaya. There they have Muslim extremists in Aceh, almost at the same level as some of the Arabic countries that we read about. Completely obsessed with the religion. Dangerous place. Everyone has a little knife behind you in their belt. Very, very dangerous.
And then from time to time, you left this area for vacation.
Yeah.
You went back to Singapore or back to the UK?
Thailand.
Thailand?
Yeah. I made that my home. I rented an apartment in Bangkok for a few years, and then I just, it was some stability for me to go back to the same place. I'd had a period where I was going everywhere, seeing as many new places as possible, and then I just wanted a bit of stability. Also somewhere to keep my stuff. You can only live out of a suitcase for so long, and plus I was accumulating a lot of memories and things from different countries by that time. I still have them.
So what stands out the most from those years in Indonesia?
The most important thing is, for me, the more primitive the person or the area, the people, the more honest they seem to be. And they are, in Irian Jaya particularly, when I went there was this wonderful innocence about the people, and always smiling and laughing, and they had nothing. All they had was their bow and arrow and their penis gourd, and all they're thinking about is their next meal. And yet they were 10 times happier than us. So they didn't have the negative qualities that we have. Things like envy, the jealousy, all this type of thing, all these negative qualities that we have in the West. Didn't see any evidence of it because they didn't have any possessions to covet, or there's nothing to steal, so there's no crime. And that stuck with me for a long time, and I did it. And I think it's a mistake to write off primitive cultures as nothing to learn. I think there's everything to learn somehow.
Very interesting. And you said that many of these stories from Indonesia you could not tell to people in England because they simply will not believe you.
Yeah, not really. I mean, I learnt quite early when I was returning to England to see my family that, yeah, the less said, the better. But the main problem in England was I'll get onto it later. When I returned to England to work, the main issue was in terms of believing what I had to say was interviewing for a job. It wasn't the cultural stories. It was the level of responsibility that I had. People found difficult to believe.
I see.
There's not a I can't think of an equivalent in the West where you would have that level of responsibility before when you're in your early 20s. I can't think of one, actually. Unless you're an entrepreneur, perhaps.
So, in concluding your time in Indonesia, what is some of the key takeaway that you want some of our listeners to walk away with or remember?
Indonesia is a very varied. Simply its geography. It's 3,000 miles wide. There are thousands of islands, each of which is totally different culturally. To travel a country like Indonesia, you have to be very flexible and if you don't watch and copy, then you won't be able to integrate or to be accepted. And that follows in all of life, really. Even when you're going on vacation, you've got to look around you to see how people behave, how they dress, how they treat each other, and then you copy. So many people don't. Indonesia is a good example because the Indonesians themselves have to do it from island to island. They have to be tolerant of the next island's culture.
So when you say copy, you mean to really be able to adjust to the local culture or local way of doing things and observe how people are doing it.
I mean, Indonesia is predominantly Muslim, not in Irian Jaya. It's a primitive. If they have any religion there, it would be some kind of pagan, sun, earth kind of religion. But most of Indonesia is Muslim. So the first thing you realize is that what not to do with your left hand. So I used to sit on it. That was my first real encounter with Muslims in Indonesia.
So Peter, tell us about the culture shock in reverse when you came back to England from this amazing experience in Indonesia.
Okay. Well, the Indonesian period ended with the industry. The price of oil plummeted around the 1986, 87. I hung on for a bit, worked in Papua New Guinea for a little bit, but then finally called it a day, late 87. By that time I had a Korean girlfriend that I met in Singapore, and we decided to give it a go back in England. So we emptied our ATM machines and got the next flight to England. Biggest culture shock in England was looking for a job. I thought I felt confident that my experience would open doors for me. Wasn't the case. And the reason why is quite interesting. When I'd left England the 9 years before, they had personnel departments, which were, their main responsibility was to take care of staff. And they would mentor people and counsel people with problems. This culture in England seemed to change rapidly, because when I went to England 8 years later, these departments didn't exist. They had been replaced by human resources departments, which seemed to control everything. They weren't supplementing interviews, they were actually running the interview process. And so when I was applying to work in England, in 9 times out of 10, I was being interviewed by somebody from human resources department, usually inexperienced and not welcoming to someone like me. So I was very unsuccessful in getting a new job, and struggled to get my message across. Mainly I was coming up against this human resources wall, and I couldn't get beyond these people to talk to people that mattered and that could see my worth. So yeah, I just persevered. It took quite a while, and eventually did get work, because I was interviewed by the person who would be my boss, rather than being interviewed by these office workers, human resource people. So yeah, I got a job working in computer with computer systems. Being an electronics engineer, that's the only area I could find. And it worked out. It worked out. I pretty hit the ground running. I married pretty quickly after arriving in England, so that carried me through, got me through the lows, because as I was saying, getting a job or failing to get a job can be very depressing when you've just moved back to your home country. And but sadly, things involving my own country didn't get any better. My new marriage kept me afloat, and one of the interesting things about England was that I started as an engineer, senior engineer, and then that was okay. That was quite, the job satisfaction was there. As I started to get promoted through the ranks of management, it got increasingly more frustrating. I wasn't used to inefficiency and wasted time, whole days spent in unproductive meetings. It killed me. It killed my job satisfaction. Made me less tolerant of people with stripes, if you like, people at certain levels in a company, and that's why I eventually left. Today, I think, is the same thing has continued in Britain, and now those same people are now higher up in the scheme of things, in infrastructure, in corporations, in government, levels of incompetence that we've not seen before. But I think the rot had started with the human resources, so that's where it all starts.
So you actually had then obviously big challenges readjusting back to the UK.
Yeah, I mean, that's work related.
Work related.
Outside of work, it's quite difficult. I mean, everyone has this, where they've returned from worldly experiences, and it's difficult to find people who have similar worldly experiences that you can relate to. Or so basically, it's difficult to find close friends. A little bit like coming out of the army or the special forces or something. The civilian don't match up somehow. And also, I noticed that England had become a more selfish place while I was away. Don't forget, this was soon after the Thatcher period. Capitalism, greed. So yeah, I didn't gel well with the middle class way of life in Britain. The dinner party kind of scene. That was difficult. So you and your wife then basically decided to leave? Yeah. She didn't want to. in contrast to me, she embraced the life of this middle class kind of golfing. For me, it was just a tiresome. It didn't feel real to me. It felt like I was just kind of. I was there for other people's benefit. I didn't understand. So we decided to go back to Korea, or not go back, but try a life in Korea. I had to prepare. I had to do some teaching qualifications. It was very restrictive on what I could do to make a living there. But yeah, I did that. Spent a year and a half in London teaching, which was also a cultural experience, because they were adults from different parts of the world. So it was quite. If you want to get an overdose of culture, that's a good activity to seek out when you're young. Teaching multi-cultures in one classroom. That's really interesting.
So you can say that prepared you well then for moving on to Korea.
Definitely. I learned there, before going to Korea, for example, that Koreans are not very creative. Japan being a close second. The way they are taught in those countries is more a rote learning process. So as a teacher, I'd be asking them to imagine themselves in a certain situation, and then write down some keywords or whatever as a teaching exercise. With those people from Northern Asia, they can't be creative. The word imagine, or sort of. I guess there are some people that do, because there are fiction books, story books, but the average person finds it very difficult compared to other cultures to come up with a scenario or and you could not do role play for that same reason.
So why do you think that is? What is that in the culture that makes it?
Well, I found out later on. And it's because the culture, especially in education, is focused on academic subjects. It makes for a very dull youth, because everyone is a carbon copy of each other. They do the same, study the same subjects. There's no options to drop this and choose this like we have in Britain, to focus on the subjects that you want to study and to let go of the ones that you are not good at or that don't interest you. In Korea, everyone studies the same thing, and their university entrance exam is one whole day, and they do all the subjects in one day, and that will determine the results. From that will determine the university that they go to. So they shut the airports for the day in Korea. As a result, anything involving creativity, art, music is all sidelined. And if a teacher tries to do something like our teachers in our generation, it's a bit of mentoring or a bit of teaching of life, useful tools for life, that doesn't wash for Korean parents.
So after a few years in the UK, you and your wife decided to move to Korea. So tell us a little bit about how the first experiences were in Korea as you moved to that country.
Okay. I'll explain it in two parts. The first impression would have been 2 years earlier. Sorry, not 2 years earlier. Several years earlier, when I first went there. Totally unique culture and fantastic. It all changed, of course, over the next 10, 15 years as the country developed, and the development was rapid. Best example was the nighttime. The nighttime was there were no shops, no bars, no restaurants. The restaurants were inside plastic tents by the side of the road that ran for miles. As far as the eye could see, there would be these tents. You'd go in to the plastic tent and there'd be a lady there serving you food and giving you your beer or whatever. That's how everyone entertained themselves. Within 10 years, that had all changed. They'd all been removed. The Olympics started the change. The country was very conscious of its image. So that was my first impression. When I went with my wife, much later, in 2000, the impression was different because my wife was pregnant. So we were living in a different, almost in a bubble for several months. But yeah, the whole giving birth to a baby in Korea is a massive culture difference. They have a system unlike any other country I've been to. When the baby is born, the mother is removed and taken to a special place for 2 or 3 weeks of recuperation. Husband not welcome, which is quite strange.
What kind of place is that?
These are places to pamper the mother. Her baby is taken with her to these special places. They're like 5-star resorts, 5-star hotels. The mother is massaged daily, fed the best quality food. Yeah, this is part of their culture.
Is this for every Korean or is it a certain class of Koreans?
I can only speak from my experience, but my wife's family were, they were working class to middle class, somewhere in that area. But that was a big culture shock to me. I couldn't understand it. You know, I was on hand to help and do things that my father and my grandfather had done. But no, in Korea it had to be done in a different way. So yeah, bang, straight into the culture difference.
And you were totally unprepared for this.
Totally unprepared. Yeah. In those days, no internet, of course, or very basic. Yeah. And anyway, even if there was internet, I would guess you'd find it difficult to research it now, this kind of subject.
And how do you live those first months or years in Korea?
How did I live? I rented a house. In a nice area. It was fine. Korean people are wonderful. but there is some real difficult. It's not for the faint-hearted to go there. Even today, it's quite difficult to integrate. Koreans can't integrate with each other. I mean, it's a collective society, but within that collective society, there are inner circles, particularly with family. Family is a key, as in most Asian countries. If you're not inside that circle, then you don't get any respect at all. Once you're in the circle, you have the ultimate respect. So, yeah, when people marry, of course, then they're coming into the circle of that family. But it's a big, big thing, much bigger than the West.
Yeah, remember you talked about this inner and outer circle.
Yeah.
And in the family sense of the inner and outer circle,
Yeah, it's more easy. It's easier to understand when you talk about family, but it extends to friends. Of course, well, not of course, but it does extend to friends, and Korea is very much age-based, so you cannot be a friend with somebody more than 2 years different in age to you. So that's the first question everyone asks. That's another big culture shock when you go there, is that people are asking you 3 or 4 questions straight out of the gate.
and those questions are
When you meet them socially, how old are you? They don't, sometimes they'll say, when did you graduate? Which is basically, how old are you? And the Koreans will ask each other their surname, because there are very few surnames, family names in Korea. I think only 20 or so names. And half of those are Lee, Kim, and Park. So they've got to ask questions. We're talking about a boy and girl, let's say. If they're thinking about, looking for a girlfriend or a boyfriend, they will want to check that their families are not too close together. So, your name's Lee, from where? And then if it's from another town, that's fine. But they have to go through this kind of filtering.
very interesting. So when you talk about inner and outer circles in a family, if you marry into that family as an Englishman, are you automatically in the inside circle, inner circle of that family, or are you outer or have to prove yourself? Or how does that work in a family setting, this inner and outer circles?
My experience, my mother-in-law and father-in-law were fantastic to me. So I felt inside immediately. I was in my 40s then when I went. So there were lots of family members who were younger. And yeah, I guess I'm being watched, and people are taking note on how I integrate. If I'm keen to learn about the culture, keen to learn the language, all this is adding to your strings to your bow when you are there, and separates you from people who are more stubborn to stay with their own culture.
And you did learn the local language. You did
It
learn
was difficult,
Korean.
very difficult. Yeah, did a year at the university.
So you learned to read and write and speak Korean.
Yeah, and not fluently. I made it to level 4 of 8. Not many Westerners get that far. You're surrounded at beyond that level. It's mostly Japanese and Chinese that can grasp that language more easily. It is tricky for us.
Did that help with the being on the inner circles of different parts of the society?
Yeah. But socially or
Socially, yes.
yeah, actually both. Socially, I'm not so sure. In business, it helps because in Korea there's a massive grapevine, so everyone can help each other into a job. You don't get recommendations from a past employer to help you get another job. You get a recommendation from somebody in your inner circle that works for a similar company. So it's a little bit difficult.
Since you're talking about business in Korea, is it a very strong hierarchy in business?
Yeah, and that's changing also.
How do you experience that? You worked as a teacher and then you moved on to Samsung. Tell us a little bit of those.
I taught business, English and business culture, Western culture, to CEOs. That was my main job for 3 or 4 years until I worked for Samsung in the stock market. So I had experience both ways. Smaller companies, how their culture is, and how they deal with their smaller pyramid, and then also in the large corporations, where you have the dreaded human resources, human remains, as they're known in England. You have that in Asian companies, big corporations. They organize these, what do you call it? Can't think of the word now. They're get-togethers to increase morale and team building. That goes on a lot in corporations.
But it's very strong hierarchy.
Yes. Yeah. And before, you could not go home until the boss went home.
Yeah.
And that could be staying until midnight.
There's no exception to that.
No exception at all. I mean, there were benefits during those days. The benefits was higher levels of camaraderie between the drones, if you like, or the worker ants. They would go out and socialize together after a hard day's work, and also lots of stress. The Koreans get rid of their stress by drinking.
Mainly the men or also ladies?
Mainly men, but also ladies before, when the culture was everybody goes. The boss will pay, everyone goes. That changed, of course, when political correctness came in, and that you weren't. Corporations didn't want to be seen to be doing certain things, so they stopped. And then that's the point when I started to dislike working in Korea. Strangely, it wasn't as interesting. It became more like it is in the West, where people are waiting for 6 o'clock and then they go home.
So it was not so accepted anymore to go out and drink together.
Yeah, and it almost fizzled out overnight.
Will you say it's very, how will you, how do you consider Korea in terms of male, female? What is sort of the role, the distribution of responsibility? Is it a very male-oriented in the workplace and female at home, or how?
Interesting question. the woman is the boss in Korea. The man earns the money, but the woman controls the family and the money. So in most cases, and men want to do this. They don't want responsibility. And mainly I'm talking about people who go to the office, work for within a large corporation. They earn a salary, and they want to give their salary to the wife for her to take on the burden of finances, paying for extracurricular training for the kids, buying the food, repairing the house, all done by the woman. The man wants nothing to do with it.
And how is it at work in the corporations?
Do what your boss tells you. It's pretty much the same as at home, what the wife will tell and the wife. It's quite astounding, actually, that men want this. They don't want the responsibility.
But at work, it's men with the responsibility.
Well, only in the way that they're doing what their boss tells them to do. And this is, I read several articles on this where they're saying this is one of the reasons why Korea developed so rapidly, that there was nobody questioned what they're being told to do from above. They just do it. They have their period of stress relief, which is going out, eating, drinking, and then go home, sleep, and get up, do it again.
And when you talk about the inner and outer circles, do you have the same at work, I assume? Or is it more of a social over?
No, I didn't see it, didn't feel it at work.
Okay.
As a foreigner, we were treated in a slightly different way. So we didn't have to do certain of the more demeaning things that they do. Where corporations will make people dance in front of everybody, or do you understand? Demeaning. So they knew that our culture was different enough that we wouldn't be comfortable with that. So we weren't asked to do that. There were several of us Westerners working there.
I'd like to go back to this inner and outer circle. You told me once that in traffic, even the inner and outer circles plays a role. Yeah, how does that play a role in driving?
Yeah, basically, if you're in other cars, you can't see who's inside, so that you assume that they're not in your circle. So they don't warrant any respect at all. And so the driving is very aggressive. I mean, in London, it can be aggressive.
Yeah.
And nobody gets angry because it's the way everybody drives. If you don't if you don't point your nose, the traffic is coming like this, you have to kind of push your way in. Otherwise, you'll be sit there forever. In Korea, it's like double that. Because they don't care about the other drivers.
But did you say you see a difference between the cities and the countryside?
Yeah, there is a difference, but only because the number of vehicles is smaller. The best thing about I've got to mention the collectiveness of Koreans, because for me, if I go to a beach and I see one end is crowded, one end is deserted, I'm a Westerner. I want peace and quiet. I will go for the deserted area. You won't find any Koreans doing this. They will go to where the people are. In a deserted restaurant, they'll sit next to the one table that's occupied, rather than find a quiet table near the window. So calling and asking for a quiet romantic table doesn't exist in Korea, which can be it's different, you know.
That's definitely very different from sort of the Western culture of wanting to find a quiet table and have a nice view
Right.
by yourself.
Yeah.
And you also told me that Korean restaurants usually are very, very specialized.
Yes. Yeah. And thankfully, I was there just recently, and my reading of Korean is still there, thanks to my education before. And you need it when you're in Korea to find the restaurant that you want to, the food that you want to eat, because the menu is displayed in the neon signs, basically. So if you want cold rice noodles, then you'll look on the street for the restaurant that's serving that.
So it definitely helped them to learn
Yeah,
learn the language, so you can actually maneuver yourself.
I'm trying to do it with Thai, which is also phonetic. So as you read it, you can make the sound. You might not know what the word means, but you can make the sound. Yeah, the Korean is the same.
A completely different topic. You told me about funerals in Korea, and I found it quite interesting. You described it as walking up to a conveyor belt.
Yeah.
The body was coming by there. I think you have some personal stories from your family. Maybe you can describe a little bit that process and how maybe it's easy for us Westerners to misunderstand that part of the culture.
Yeah, I mean, I still don't understand it fully. It's very graphic. Basically, my mother-in-law died young. It was a cancer. And so being in the inner circle, I was part of the whole process from the ceremony to the cremation and scattering of the ashes, everything. The funeral itself, the funeral ceremony was 3 days, and 3 days of wailing, people coming, friends, family, distant relatives, neighbors, coming to pay their last respects. And 3 days, and I would be standing for 3 days, welcoming the guests. The doors are open for 24 hours a day for 3 days, and we are waiting. I was the husband of the second daughter, so I'm second in line of men. The men line up and bow, welcome everybody in. Some of them are wailing and of course drinking. The paying the respects is during the day, and then in the evening people come and have some drink in front of the coffin. So that's quite that was quite, yeah, it tugs on your emotions, but then because people get very emotional, and as I'll explain with the actual cremation process, and everything is, I think, designed to speed up the grief process, the grieving, and to get the grief out rapidly. our equivalent in Europe, of course, the whole thing is over in 2 hours, and people take their grief home with them. In Asia, not only Korea, the ceremonies last for a long time and try to pull out the grief, I think.
So I find this story most interesting. And I never thought about it in those terms before. In terms of getting the grief out, that you're bringing it out over a longer period of time, and then maybe then in a better position to move on now.
Right. That's what I think. And the part of this, which is the cremation, is so difficult to watch. And I can only think that it's designed. First of all, I thought that why do families want to see their loved one actually see the body being burnt, pulverized, and smashed up, and then put into the box? And it's all done behind glass on a conveyor belt. And I was thinking, why do they want to do this? And I thought it was a sort of mistrust at first, that they, they might make a mistake with the bodies, and you don't get the actual one. That's what I thought for many years. But then, as I get older and I see other similar kind of ceremonies, I think it's all about the grief, the grieving, and almost to shock the bereaved, the family members.
Very.
So that afterwards it is then easier. So the actual cremation is a traumatic experience to go through.
This is the most interesting.
I think it's psychological. And
So now, moving on from the funeral story, which I found intriguing, let's go to sort of the daily life in Korea. So now you're a married man, you have a daughter, and you ended up buying a house, and you got the job with Samsung.
Yeah, life became very comfortable.
What's the sort of daily life like? Do you eat dinner at home? Do you go out for lunch? Do you go out for dinner at restaurants? Do you go to parties with your wife? Do you meet your friends? What is the life like in Korea?
Yeah, well, during that comfortable period, financially comfortable, I was working for Samsung. We'd now passed that period of working long hours and long, almost forced partying with your work colleagues. Gone past that, so there was no real socializing at work. Work was work, and Koreans socialize with food. It's always, a restaurant, good food, lots of family outings.
So if you go out for dinner, you go with father-in-law, mother-in-law, brothers, sisters to your wife?
Yeah,
or
2 or 3 times a year would be the whole family.
okay.
Yeah, they have all sorts of anniversaries. I mean, in Korea, because it's a collective society, if you were Korean, you would have a monthly meeting with all your primary school friends, so your first school. You would still be in touch with everybody in the class, and you'd meet up once a month. You'd also once a month meet up with your secondary school classmates, and then also your alumni from university and previous companies that you'd worked for. You'd meet up with them every so often. And so this is regular. This is all Koreans.
So we call that the collective society.
Well, it's a good example of the collective society. They like numbers, safety in numbers. That the more people in their address book, the more people there are to help them if they need a recommendation for a job. This is what it boils down to. So it's insurance for the future, not just nice people that they like to meet. It's kind of strange, but
I found that it's a very, very intriguing way of seeing it as an insurance. You keep the social circles.
I mean, that's my take on it. No one ever says that.
No, but we want your take on it. So that's
Yeah.
But that's very, very. I mean, I never thought about it in those terms before, but it makes sense, and because it's comfortable, you feel safe, you help each other, and
I mean, if you think about it, years later, social media is everything now for young people, and they want to have 2,000, 3,000 so-called friends. They're not really friends. They're just people that they've met during their lives, you know. So this is kind of very similar to the Korean way.
So let's move on to a completely different topic. We talked about your wealthy investor friend who like to sometimes take you out to what to me sounds like a geisha type of a setup. But
Yeah, they call them room salon in Korea. Room salon. It's just the name. It has a bad negative meaning as a term, because there are different types of these places. Basically, they are places where businessmen can go for company, to drink and with the company, sometimes with singing machines, sometimes without, with live performers. And they come in various standards and different costs. So
this is a place where men go to meet attractive ladies. You can have conversations, drink.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
But it's not a sexual kind of a place.
Some of them are.
Or some of them are.
Mm-hmm. So that's why I was trying to explain that there are some that, I mean, most men visit these places with their close friends, Korean men, and I'm sure, it's hidden from their partners. Yeah.
So Korea has a lot of people. I mean, there's a high density. There's a lot of people per square kilometer.
Yeah.
How do you think is influencing society when you are living in a very crowded space like Seoul?
It makes people less tolerant of each other, less caring. I think if you go, and I've been to small villages in Korea. They are the same as villages everywhere. They have a nice little community, and they take care of each other. If somebody needs some help, they will give it. Cities, of course, totally different. The people become more selfish the more money they have. Priorities change when you're living in a city. That's why I don't live in a city anymore.
So after all of these experiences, in Korea, and your daughter were going to school there, right?
Yeah, she went to an all-Korean school because at that time I had no plans to move. I was making a new life. So I figured, she could learn Korean fluently because that's where we were living, and she could pick up some English from me, which worked to a point. But the English teaching level in Korean schools is not good.
Did you speak English with your daughter?
Yeah.
So you said you were planning to stay there, but somewhere along your living in Korea, you actually decided to move back to England with your wife and daughter.
Yeah. Well, there was a driving factor behind that. That was education for her. Her written English was very poor at the age of 12. And at that point, she'd been in two Korean schools. Written English was probably, she was 12 years old. Her level in England would have been about the age of 7 for written English. So she was well behind the curve.
Was that a driving force for you did you want to move back to England, or?
Well, no, yes, I did. I realized when she was around 10 or 11, I thought this is not going to work. If her eventual target is to go to a British university. And I knew she had wanted to be a vet since she was, 6 years old. She'd had different animals. That was her, that was everything. Still is.
And that's what she eventually became.
Yeah.
So,
But to do that, got to go to a university, and there were only 6 universities in England that did it. Surprisingly, quite small number.
So how did your family in Korea, or her parents or other family members, react when you said, hey, we're going to move back to England?
But they understood. I mean, it wasn't a sudden thing. So when she was 12, I decided to pay for an international school for 2 years. And that's a painful cost. I mean, that was in Korea almost the same price as the top private schools in England. The Eton and Harrow, and it was almost the same cost as that. Again, another culture shock, because you're meeting the elite, children of the elite families, Korean families, in international schools.
So the elite families in Korea, will they send their kids to?
Yeah, all of them.
All of them, international.
They either do it in Korea or they send them abroad.
I see.
Yeah. So because no one has faith in the Korean universities, because nobody fails, everyone passes. Even if you don't attend for 4 years, you will get your.
And as you said earlier, also you had the concern that there was a lack of creativity or encouragement to critical thinking. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I don't know whether Korean managers are any worse than Western managers. I couldn't say that. But I do know that the average Korean man doesn't have any hobbies, you don't see any creativeness. Even in business, the ideas are coming from your boss. and his boss and his boss. So people are just they just implement.
Just executing.
Right, executing.
Okay, there was some great stories from living in Korea. If someone is considering moving to Korea today from England or Norway, what recommendation would you pass on to them?
Be prepared for shocks, even today. There's something interesting to see every day that you won't see in other Asian countries. It's a unique place. Great food. You got to be open-minded. You have to put up with a lot of xenophobia because it's not intentional. It's not not done with any malice. The way we see racism in the West, it's just a kind of, it's a feeling that everyone has there that I think stems from their hatred of the Japanese. That they have to think that they are better than the Japanese. And then that extends to they are better than everyone else.
So it's a great rivalry between Korea and Japan.
Japan colonized the country until 1905.
And of course there were...
1945.
The Japanese, we all know the World War II stories.
Yeah,
which
well,
was
the comfort women and everything.
brutal.
My father-in-law, my ex-wife's father, he was forced to learn Japanese. They could not speak their own language.
No.
So that, yeah, they don't talk about it.
Are they Koreans in general, since the Korean War in the 1950s, war-torn country, and today a very modern country?
Massive.
They must be
very steep rise.
They must be very proud of their progress.
Yes, I think so. The young people are very proud of the technology advancement that the country has. It was one of the first capital cities to have these, massive TV screens above the department stores. It just looked, in advance of the USA and Britain in their technology.
And today, almost everyone in the world has a Samsung TV at least.
Right.
Including
I visited recently, and I didn't like this new technology that they have. In a restaurant now, you don't talk to anyone anymore. You just tap in what you want on a screen at your table, and it comes. And there's no social interaction, which suits Koreans because, of course, they're not in a circle. So why bother talking to anyone?
The waiter is in the outside the circle.
Yeah.
Very, very interesting point.
You don't see thank you and the politeness to waiters and cleaners and.
So the inner and outer circles play a huge role in society.
Yeah, but you do in the villages. So I think the inner and outer circle is kind of, it suits people in cities that have another agenda, if you like.
Then Peter's going to tell us about his experience moving back to England for the second time, this time from Korea. And it's actually 25 years after he first moved back to England, when he moved back from Indonesia or Singapore. So, Peter, how was it to get back to England for a second time with your Korean wife and daughter?
Okay, going back this time, or the second time, there was a reason, obviously, to educate my daughter. So for a short time, it was fine. I was just ticking the boxes, moving our stuff, renting a house, picking a school. That had to be done. So I went first. I was there alone for a little while. Got a good school, ticked all the boxes, bought 2 new cars, which I'll mention later. And everything started okay. And then the rot started to set in. When my wife arrived, because she had packed all our belongings and shipped them to England, then she came. Pretty quickly, within a year, I think I would say, within a year, life wasn't good for me. I'd struggled to adjust even more this time than the first time I arrived. People had changed in that 25 or 15 to 20 years in England. People had become more selfish. Things had become far more inefficient. I was struggling to have any social interaction with people. It seemed that people weren't even going out anymore. There was a number of restaurants had shrunk. Pubs were closing. Young people were doing different things. I don't know whether it was the internet or... Anyway, it wasn't the same. It wasn't the same. There was no way for me to relieve stress, and I found it quite stressful. Couldn't get things done. I was forever.
What do you mean by not getting things done?
Well, part and parcel of me living there, once I got my daughter into school and we had a place to live and we had vehicles, then I invested in another property. I wasn't working. I'd already finished working for the man. So I then became self-employed, and I bought a property at auction to renovate and make an income. But when you've got projects on the go, you need to make repairs. You need to arrange, I don't know, internet connection, electricity bills, anything involved in infrastructure requires a phone call. Whereas before I could perhaps solve 4 or 5 problems in a morning. All of a sudden, it was taking 2 days to do one. No one was answering the phone anymore. And everyone is telling you that it will take 5 working days to respond to your email. And I just couldn't understand it. And no one was picking up the phone, and you're at your cost, of course. You're sitting there waiting somebody to answer. Lots of computer answer messages. Press 1 for this and press 2 for this. And all of this was my precious time. So it slowly made me feel quite bitter towards England, because in Korea you can get 10 things done before lunchtime. So I was becoming more and more frustrated. I didn't like the middle class kind of golf dinner party scene. Everybody living a kind of soap opera life, wanting to know about other people's lives. I don't know, is it the same in Norway? I'm guessing.
Yeah,
I didn't like this. My wife loved it.
she loved it.
Yeah, so, we then started to get friction, and slowly the marriage crumbled. Within 2 years of arriving in England. So it did massive decline, big culture shock. I couldn't find an equivalent to the golf and the club, and very collective. She needed that. I didn't like that. I was more of a loner. It didn't work out.
So you were really moving in different directions.
Yeah, I wanted out and she wanted to stay. We separated, basically. And I finished my house projects, and I stayed on for almost 2 years until my daughter made it to university. And she got straight A's everywhere. I mean, fantastic. It was one of my greatest achievements. The 2 years that I'd struggled to pay in a private school, the timing was just right. When we came to England for the school interviews, most rejected her based on her written English. Her maths were off the charts. Thanks to the Korean system, they are very good academically. But the written English, many of the more prestigious schools refused on the grounds that her written English was too low. She took 2 GCSE exams within 2 years of arriving in England and got the highest marks in English, 2 English, which made me laugh because these schools had rejected her.
So at this point, your ex-wife at this point in time and your daughter seems to have integrated very well into the English society.
Yeah,
And
they're still there.
are thriving and loving it.
Yeah.
Yet the Peter himself is a nomad, right? He's been traveling.
Yeah, I headed back to my favorite place on the overall scheme of things, and I headed to Thailand, where I'd never been disappointed with the culture, the way of life, the culture, the people. And that's how I started to come back.
So what was the final straw that said, hey, I'm leaving England? And did you realize that it was for good this time?
The final straw. The final straw, the decision that I would leave England came when the marriage ended. I realized there was nothing. I had to wait until my daughter moved on, and then I knew I would be on the plane. I made all the arrangements leading up to that point.
So Peter was ready to move on again to new adventures. And stay tuned. We are moving to Thailand next.
Thailand always been number one on my list. Even during the period when I was in Korea. The two countries are very similar in some ways, where they have community-based cultures. In the smaller villages. And I'm a country boy. I come from a small village in the south of England. 500 people in our village when I was growing up. So there's a lot to be said about relating to when you were younger. I see it around me here all the time. People still, strangers still say hello to each other. And there are family-based businesses here, which I like. They've all but disappeared in England now. Family-based, it's more of a pleasure to shop there or eat there. Your money is going to the people that you see around you rather than upper corporate pyramid to some shareholders. And this is one of the reasons I live where I live, that I can choose to go and eat in a family-run business and get more pleasure out of that. And when I first came, stayed in Bangkok for 2 years, which I knew Bangkok obviously from when I was a young man. I lived there. Bangkok has also got its differences. Now I've moved on. I think I've actually moved up a level, moving away from the city. The cities, even Bangkok, which gave me so much pleasure in my life, has now shows some things that I don't like. I think the wealth, as people's general wealth increases, in cities, they become a little bit more selfish, and sort of uncaring, and I can sense that there, and I don't here, so I'm happy here.
So, and here is Hua Hin.
Yeah, and even Hua Hin, I live further away from the small town, so I live in a small village. It's nice. It's nice. I get old people smiling at me, and that's what I need. I'm a bit old-fashioned, I suppose.
Yeah.
But I spend a lot of time in my girlfriend's home area, Kalasin province, which is a totally different. That is more like my grandparents' village, in that things have hardly changed there for 100 years, including the size of the village. I mean, my village in England, which was 500 people, is now 10,000 people, with development and expansion. This village which may well be my final stop in my life's journey, is around 500, 600 people. Still the same as it always has been. The population increase has been balanced by the younger people not wanting to live there anymore. So the population has remained quite stable. Younger people head for the cities where they can make a living. In the villages, unless you cut sugarcane or I don't know what else. Run a small mum and pup shop or something. There's not much to do.
Maybe some fish farming or shrimp farming,
my
frogs farm,
yeah,
that sort of thing.
yeah. I
So-
mean, this particular village is not near a main road, so there's even less. It's just kind of you drive in 7 or 8 kilometers.
So I find it quite fascinating that you are thinking that might be your final stop so to say, on this
Yeah.
incredible adventure you have been on. And so Thailand has a lot of diversity. You have major cities like obviously Bangkok, which is an incredibly modern city. And parts of Thailand is very modern in terms of highway systems and
Yeah.
shopping malls and restaurants and healthcare, dentists. Everything is top notch.
So that to me is the safety net for me personally. Should I need it, there are shopping malls and sort of top-notch hospitals, infrastructure, more advanced infrastructure is there if I need it. But I actually prefer to live in a different kind of area. So that's why I chose here. Was it's everything's within easy reach of a Western standard. In fact, the dental and the medical here is more advanced than my country.
Yeah, and that's
Easily.
that's my experience as well.
Yeah. The great thing about Thailand is that if you're a culture junkie like me, you need something to surprise you often. Then Thailand is a country full of different cultures. You've got the northern area, Chiang Rai, Chiang Mai, Pai, Tak. Fascinating place. I do go there with off-road motorcycle and disappear into the mountains. I could do that and for 100 years and not be bored. And other countries in the south, you've got the more Muslim area. Again, fascinating, but different. Isan, of course, is two parts. You've got the Lao part and the Khmer part. Again, it's just wonderful. All different.
So I think it says a lot about Thailand if a globetrotter and the culture self-describe is a self-described culture junkie.
Well, thinking about it, I should have mentioned this perhaps as a reason for leaving the UK twice. That's one of the main reasons, that there is no cultural hook that gives me I need learning. I need to learn about stuff that I don't know. And if you're surrounded with things that you do know, life becomes mundane. And many people in our home countries don't see the same way, don't see life the same way. They don't see new cultures and new behaviors and other races as a source of learning. They don't. There's like and we experienced this the other evening. There's it's of no interest to me, or it's and then the focus becomes on your own culture only, and I can't. I find it frustrating with people who think like that.
Yeah, most people only leave for maybe 1 or 2 weeks vacation.
Yeah,
staying at a hotel somewhere.
But there are thousands of people who live here who think exactly like this, that don't see the people around them as a wonderful source of learning, because they are doing things differently, sometimes better, sometimes worse than the way we do it in our own countries. And I'm fascinated by that difference.
So you're saying that people living here from, say, Europe are also living in sort of a bubble and not taking in the local culture.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So you need to burst that bubble somehow.
Yeah, and it's not the stereotype, the guy that's out here for a certain kind of tourism and just sitting drinking, and it's not those people. It's just I've met couples here, Western couples, that don't see anything beyond their little dinner party group of 6 to 8 friends. No one else is in focus for them. Just the 6 or 7 or 8 Western friends that they have.
Do you think that is because many of them are actually just moving from a very isolated situation in their home country? So like people are coming from England or Norway, moving to Thailand maybe in the old days, but they have lived in this small village in Norway their whole life. So they've been in a bubble the entire life there. And now they go to Thailand and they just stay in another bubble. It's a warmer place to be, better climate, beautiful beaches, nice restaurants. So it's a pleasant life, while they are still in the small bubble and not interested in what's outside.
Yes, I think so. I mean, I've met many people in England, and they're still there, living that kind of life. Small circle of friends, they see the same people every week or twice a week.
So what you're saying is they're taking that bubble from England or from Norway or Germany, moving that bubble to Thailand, because in Thailand the bubble sits in a more pleasant place, warmer and nice beaches, but you're still in the bubble.
I think so. I don't. Where I lose the understanding is that I see this wonderful place where I can learn new things. But you don't learn new things if you don't meet people from these cultures. You don't learn anything, actually, if you just stay, you tread water with your existing friends from another country. And
I think that's a fascinating way of looking at it.
and
It's,
what's the point of traveling if you're not going to learn anything? You have to learn in order to copy, in order to blend in order for doors to open and for you to experience even more.
So this is sort of set in your. It's sort of set based on your previous experiences or what you have done previously in your life. You're not going to change even if you move to Thailand. It sounds like it's a big step if you're moving from Norway to Thailand or UK to Thailand. Most are doing it maybe for 6 months out of the year or 8 months or 10 months and they go back. But they're just moving the bubble. The difference is, like with you, Peter, is that you lived your life in Africa, in Indonesia, in the jungle, in Korea. You have already sought new experiences, and therefore you are seeking them now as well. While many of these others coming here have never sought a new experience other than just moving from one location to another. One safe location to another safe location.
I mean, it's not just Asia. People in Europe, they take a vacation in Spain. There's plenty of interesting things and cultural differences to learn from in Spain. But it's not, because it's actually, there are whole towns that are mini English towns, because that's what those vacationers want.
I had a friend of mine just told me a few months ago that they are living most of the most part of the year in Spain, but they haven't learned one word of Spanish. And he said, because we don't have to. Everyone speaks Norwegian at our restaurants.
Well, that implies that they only go to one restaurant, you know.
Yeah, or two or three.
Yeah, there you go. And same people. And
So that was a great sort of summary of Thailand. And I really appreciate your perspective, because you're also making me think about many things I wondered about. And I think you have a very good way of putting your finger on it. And that's because you have this incredible background and cultural experience. You can actually see and point out things. Even as I myself have traveled quite a bit, but not always able to put my finger on what is it that...
One thing it strikes me here is that if I come up against a problem, in England, if there is a problem, I get depressed. Because it will take days to resolve normally, but I'm just generally not thinking about problems in the right way. Here, if there's a problem, and my Thai girlfriend has taught me this, and other Thai people have shown me this, they have an attitude which is, don't worry about it. You know, it'll resolve itself, or you'll be able to. Don't let it upset your life. You know, life is much more important than that. And this is a nice way of dealing with things, because in daily life you're going to have setbacks. You know, you have a flat tire on your motorbike, but I guess it's because in Thailand, as long as you have some cash in your pocket, you can get things done. So there ceases to be a problem. Almost anything is not really a problem, which is a nice way to live, you know, and so the stress is less. People have less stress.
So it's very flexible,
Yeah.
creative, flexible environment.
Yeah, and this is such a bonus when you're later in life, where you don't want stress. You know, I just want a nice. I want to wake up and smile and think what I'm doing for the day or how to spend my day. I don't want to be worried about like a sackload of problems that I didn't resolve the day before.
Do you have an example of a specific problem or stress situation that you were able to resolve quickly and easily in Thailand?
Well, yeah, I'm not going to talk about the immigration problem, which was a massive problem.
But it was resolved.
But which could be resolved, yeah. Have a massive problem with potential deportation, you know. I mean, they don't come much bigger than that when you want to live here.
And they came about just because of sort of an innocent oversight on your part that the visa had expired with a few days.
There are dozens of examples, if I think about it. But they didn't cause any stress, because there's a path here. There's a path to everywhere. A phone call or a quick taxi ride can resolve something. But in my own country, you can't do that anymore. You know, it'll take you a week to get an appointment to talk to somebody to discuss your problem. You know, here it just takes it. Yeah, I can go into town and I can get a dozen things done in a morning, and still have time for a coffee. You know, and whereas in England I'd be on the phone from morning to night, and with maybe only get one thing resolved.
Fascinating story. Fascinating story. So this has been an incredible conversation, Peter. An incredible life, incredible experiences. It's just amazing to hear these stories. And now we have maybe quite a few people watching this podcast, and maybe we have some younger people watching this podcast, people starting out, or people who are considering how can we maybe get out and get some of this experience ourselves. I think you will be an inspiration to a younger generation. And I hope we can get this out there, because it's so important to go out and experience things.
Yeah, and the things you gain from this, from cultural experiences around the world, or even within one country, different culture, they stay with you, and they add to your armory of knowledge.
They enrich your life.
Yeah,
Enrich your life forever.
Yeah, make you a better person too.
I've been on a little bit of a sort of a crusade with Norwegian young people, where I'm saying that everyone between 18 and 40 needs to get out of Norway and live in a different country for at least 2 to 3 years. My experience is it takes 2 to 3 years to get integrated into a country, to really understand the culture. Do things like taking the local driver license, get the local dentist, maybe go to a local health clinic to get into society. So I'm saying get out there, take a chance, and find that opportunity, find a job, move your kids, move your family. It's going to enrich your life forever. And we don't have to go as far as extreme as Peter has done. He has experienced a lot. Even a fraction of that will enrich your life greatly.
Well, in Australia, the government supports people traveling, has done for 50 years or so. And companies will leave the job open for their people to travel for a year and then go back and pick up where they left off. It's part of their culture, business culture. Being a remote country, everyone understands that there's a need, and it benefits the country long term. This is the same. So I think in order to get people from, for example, Norway to buy into this, the government's got to be pushing it as well, supporting companies that leave the jobs open for them to come back. But it's a valid point to any country. It doesn't matter how, even Americans need to get out. No country is the place that does everything the best in the world.
So in conclusion, we can certainly say that there's a tremendous amount of value for anyone to get out for a few years at least, to live in a different country or a different culture. So with that, I will ask Peter if he has any closing sort of thoughts, especially for the younger generation. In terms of getting out there. So Peter?
The same thing. Get out there. Choose, there is levels of risk for different countries. So you've got to assess yourself and your own level of experience and tolerance and what have you, and just go for it. Choose something that the countries that are varied within their border are the most interesting, because you can it's almost like visiting separate countries within one country, and not to spend too little time in each place. Many people do this, and they only scratch the surface, so that they don't actually discover very much. It's far better and far more enriching to go to one place for a month than go to 10 places in that month.
Very wise words indeed coming from Peter. And with that,
Can I say one thing?
absolutely.
My overriding takeaway for myself from these years of traveling is that I'm now, the longer I travel, and I'm still learning, still discovering new parts of the country, the longer I do it, the more tolerant I become of people with less money. And the less tolerant I become of people with money. So I've actually, yeah, I'm veering towards a certain part of society now, and that's what the years of traveling have taught me, or pushed me to in that direction, because that's where I'm getting the enjoyment. I'm actually getting the opposite from places with money and places where. And places with money means the developed countries in the world, developed cities and developed towns. And
To see that value of sitting in that more simple environment,
yeah,
having real experience,
it never disappoints.
never disappoints.
So that's something that perhaps younger people don't dwell upon. You know, they are perhaps attracted to the high levels of technology and but lurking beneath there is some ugliness to me, and lack of culture. Because those are the places where the culture is dissipating, and it's all becoming sort of a globalized, more boring place.
So when you travel, it's not only about getting to a new culture, it's also about finding the realness in that culture.
Yeah, increasingly, because I guess villages have become towns over the years, and the towns become cities, and the only place where things haven't changed, where it's still the same, are the very tiny areas and the hamlets and the small beach areas. And
I think you can probably find that also in the big cities. You find
Yeah.
small spots of realness,
Sure.
where reality really still exists.
Yeah.
And you can get that incredible good feeling, the feeling of, wow, this is real. The lady who's serving you the dinner on the streets of Bangkok for $1 or $2. I found this unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's just incredible experience.
But she'll have a bigger smile than the staff working in a big chain restaurant, you know.
Absolutely.
Or a Costa coffee or something.
We're gonna wrap up here, and Peter's gonna share a couple of fun stories. We're gonna start with his best and his worst food experience.
Okay. I'm not sure best or worst. Two best maybe, or two worst, whichever way you look at it. One has to be the live octopus in Korea. First time I visited Korea, 1986. Lucky to meet a manager of a large hotel who invited me to a restaurant, and with a bunch of his friends, I was the guest of honor. And as the guest, I got to choose the octopus from the tank. And if you've not done that before, you don't know what's a good one or what's a bad one. So I just pointed to one. They pulled it out. I had no idea what was going to happen. Put it down onto a chopping board and a few swift chops, and it was brought to the table with sesame oil and still wriggling. And with chopsticks, I again, watch and copy. I had no idea how to eat this stuff, watching others, and I copied and put it in your mouth, and the suckers stick on your lips. So you got to get it in quickly, not let it stick on your mouth. Fortunately, I'd had a lot of rice wine by that time, so I could do it. But it was an interesting first experience. I'd never seen it. No internet then, of course. Not ever seen this before experiencing it. And now my daughter, of course, when she was very young, she would eat it herself at the age of 4 or 5, live octopus. So yeah, it was my first one of my first unusual dining experiences in Korea, and then it came back later on when I had a child. So it was quite interesting.
Wow.
Yeah. There's another story. If you again, a wealthy friend, Korean friend, took me out. Fantastic meal, and it was mainly sushi. And at the end of the meal, as a guest of honor, I was the only Westerner. He asked the chef to bring me the delicacy from this tuna fish. The chef and one of his men carried the head into the restaurant, to the table. The head of this tuna fish is like and the eye looks like a saucer, And then they squeezed the eye into a small glass, the water from the fish's eye, and with great ceremony, guest of honor, this is for you. And the tuna fish disappears. It's this massive head of this fish. And they toasted me with their rice wine, and then I had the tuna fish eye water, which tasted like water. Had no taste. So
What was the big day?
I don't know. I've never heard of anyone ever having that similar experience. I've never researched it. I was told that it's many $100s a glass. So I drank it. It was like distilled water or Evian.
Maybe it was supposed to be good for something.
Probably.
Yeah. That's why similar, I don't know.
Yeah. Like many other things in Korea.
Yeah.
The eel and octopus again,
They were hitting on the right things.
Well, because you drink with men, so the men are ordering the things that they think are good for them,
So what is a couple of the most funny, culture misunderstandings?
Funniest. It's got to be not myself, an Australian friend of mine who was living with me, living at the same time in Korea. And we met there. He had only recently come to Korea, and he told me the story. He stayed with a family, and the night he arrived, he had a long haul flight, he needed a shower. They gave him, they showed him the bathroom. And he stripped off and got in the bath and started to soap up his body. And he had a nice bath. And what he didn't know was that it was not a bath. It was the family's clean water supply that they use with buckets to take a shower. And they use over the course of a week, you know, and he got in the water. It was soapy water. And they discovered this later, of course, the family. The next person who used the bathroom is like
As they were drinking it.
I thought that was rather funny. I could picture it. I could picture this white foreign.
Oh, that's the good one. Another one comes to mind.
What, funny culture stories? No, I'd have to.
Oh, that was a good one.
Yeah.
So, are there any specific cultural habits you have picked up along the road that you have kept?
Yeah, I think so. As a young man, first, not from Africa, but first time in Asia, I was impressed by people's respect for older people. It was sort of automatic. There was no thinking involved. It was part of being an Asian person, and that stayed with me. And now I am the old people, you know, the old person. So, there. So, but I still do. Old people, I will still stand up and give old people younger than me. I'd still stand up and give them the seat. I'm not conscious of age really, but I definitely always in my whole life have tried to copy that from the Asian way. We don't have it in the UK.
I would say sometimes in country like Norway, it's the opposite.
Yeah.
The old people get up from the young.
Yeah. Strange. But yeah, that would be the main one.
Okay.
Probably the earliest thing I learnt, and the one that stayed with me the longest.
Yeah.
More recently is the need to be calm, you know, and because particularly in this country is anger is not an emotion that goes down well here at all. Even frustration, if you show it, it doesn't make people feel comfortable. And it's probably linked to what I said earlier, which is nothing should be a problem here because you can resolve things. So any sign of stress is not common. So, you know, if you want to blend in, you've got to try to copy how people behave here. I also like The way Thais generally are more like British people than Americans, in that they keep their voices low in restaurants. Okay, a drinking place is slightly different, where everybody is noisy. But generally, you won't find Thais with loud voices in a restaurant, which I find nice.
Yes, I find that very nice as well.
What a journey we have taken today. From the dangers of frontier Africa to the rituals of Korea, from the jungles of Irian Jaya to the quiet rhythms of Thailand. What we have heard today is that culture is not just background noise. It decides how we connect, how we trust, and how we succeed. And maybe the most important lesson is this: culture will always shape you, whether you fight it or embrace it. If you let it, culture does not just change how you see the world, it changes who you are. Thank you for joining my podcast. See you next time.